All right, sedimentary rocks. We're going to classify them two different ways. With sedimentary rocks, it really has to do with you know where the material it came from that made up the rocks, right? The source of the material. So clastic rocks, clastic sedimentary rocks are when you take the particles, the little tiny bits of weathered rock, and it basically cements and into this. Well, it doesn't happen automatically, but these things, these sedimentary rocks, happen in layers, and so more and more stuff piles on them, and then eventually these things, even if it wasn't rock material, like a leaf or something like that, eventually, well, if one of the things you have to consider is, if there's a leaf there or something like that, or a little stick or something like that, if there's a lot of oxygen available, then the bacteria will basically eat that stuff. Like any organic stuff will get eaten by bacteria, but that's only in high oxygen regions. So there's got to be a lot. So where there's not a lot of oxygen would be like very very muddy, swampy type of areas. That those are oxygen poor, and so like if a rock or something, sorry, if a stick or a leaf or something, in those swampy, muddy areas, and we're really talking about about 300. A lot of this stuff formed about 300 million years ago, or more. Anyhow, the Earth, because of the way the Earth was back then, there was this very muddy, boggy terrain, and you could have a lot of leaves and animals dying, and not, the bacteria wouldn't get to it, and before it got buried, and then eventually, this idea of clastic is this material eventually becomes rock, just through pressure and temperature over huge amounts of time, and then of course there's little bits of rock that are there as well. And then this is the stuff that where you find fossils, right? You can actually find fossils in these plastic rocks. Okay, so chemical rocks are different in the following way. There's some chemical that is already been dissolved in water and in solution. Usually talking about water. And then when the water evaporates or dissolves in some way, maybe there's a huge source of heat, but or just normal evaporation, then what remains will form rocks. So, like, for example, halite, of course, is what becomes salt, right? This is from salt water evaporating, and what the crystals of salt will form, and you'll have halite, right? The mineral halite. Limestone comes from what's called calcite, right? So calcite is carbon and carbon and calcium. Calcium carbonate. Anyhow, that's generally what it's called, calcium carbonate. And so this actually, a lot of this comes from the limestone comes from living creatures that use the calcium carbonate in their biological functions, like making shells, for example. And then when those creatures die, the shells end up, at the bottom of the body of water, and you get that calcium carbonate dissolves in the water, and you'll get limestone, right? Remember, this is sedimentary rock, so layer upon layer upon layer of this builds up over time, and you'll get limestone. All right, so those are the two main ones, right? This clastic rock and chemical rocks, right? Here are the different types of clastic. Actually, before that, I wanted to show you. Well, we'll go over this, and then I'll show you the pictures. So the classic sedimentary rocks has to do with particle size. The smallest of them all are made from, or what we call shale. It's made from mud size or silt size particles. Sandstone is, a little bit bigger. You'll get a better sense of it when we look at the picture. Quartz, of course, is the predominant mineral that is involved in creating sandstone. Remember, we're talking about making rocks now. And then larger, if larger particles make up the rock, it's these sedimentary rocks. That's called a conglomerates. All right, and so these tend to be really large, and they're not well sorted. Like the shale is very, very well sorted. They're all about the same size. Here, let me see if I can. Here, so let's do this, and we can look right here. Oops, not right there, right here. Okay, so this will give us a better sense, right? So from clay and silt, which are very, very tiny, I'm sorry, with clay you have shale, which you can just use. Sometimes it's also called mudstone, just like siltstone is also sometimes called sandstone. So that's coming from, sand type materials. All right. So these are showing the sizes of these different materials, and then larger pieces will make up this conglomerates. All right. So shale sandstone here. So here, let me move this over a little bit so you can see these pictures that I'm talking about. This is in your textbook, by the way. So this is shale right here. You can see that here. So shale is A. You can kind of see it's very it's made of this clay material. This is rock, of course. This is clastic sedimentary rock. Then comes sandstone. So the grains are a little bit bigger. And then extremely coarse is the conglomerate, right? So that's this one right here. Right, so I just wanted to show you that. I think sometimes it's nice to see these pictures. All right, so and of course, sandstone. You can further classify this stuff. Sandstone. There's 3 different types of sandstone. Depends on what it's made from and things like that. All right. Let's get back to our slides, and let me move this over just a little bit so we can go the right spot. Oops. Okay, there we go. All right. So this is oops. Yeah. Okay. So conglomerates. Just remember that they're mainly divided into size. Okay. So all right. Then limestone. So with limestone, you have this is the most abundant of the chemical rocks. Remember, we divided sedimentary rock into clastic and chemical. So now we're talking about the chemical, which are limestone. That's a really good example because that's the one that you find. It's composed chiefly of the mineral calcite. I mentioned this before, right? It's calcium and carbonate. This chemical bonded together Let's say, you have a lot of marine life that, through their living organisms, they will actually use the calcite, and eventually, limestone is formed, right? Um, okay. All right. Um, there's this stuff called coquina that is their broken shells. Chalk, common chalk that, where they used to use on a slate chalkboard. And we don't really have those anymore. We have markers, of course, but there was a time when people used chalk, and that was, from these chemical sedimentary rocks, right? And if you look at this, like, look at this thing, you can see that it looks like it was, glued together. That's for me. That's always, an indication of sedimentary rock. You have, something like a kid just glued a bunch of stuff together that they just reached out, and whatever was available, they glued it together. Um, all right, so evaporates. Let's talk about that just for just a little bit, because this is also something that goes into these chemical rocks. So for example, you have um, let's say salt, for example, salt that's in water. We know the oceans are made of that, but there's other places around the world that have had salt waters. Like, think about the Great Salt Lake in Utah. Anyhow, if those bodies of water, as they evaporate, they will leave salt deposits, right? So that's like an example of a chemical sedimentary rock. Gypsum is another example of there was some kind of chemical. Actually, we could figure out what. I think it's actually. Um, a type of, well, I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to say it and get it wrong. All right. Anyhow, so gypsum, we know is used in drywall, right? That's the mineral that is mined for drywall purposes. All right. So there's another type of chemical sedimentary rock that is extremely important to our civilization today. All right. So, a long time ago, roughly 300 million years ago, and we'll get much more into this. I think it's in chapter 22 or 23. We'll examine this in much more detail. But remember, the Earth was a very swampy place, and as these the plants died, this what was called peat, or there's still peat, of course, all over the place. But as it died, you had layers of it that formed, and they have different names for these things. So let's say the peat had died after a certain amount of time. Um, and there's some pressure and heat that causes the peat to turn into this stuff called lignite, right? And then the lignite, more pressure and more heat turns it into bituminous. This bituminous rock. By bituminous rock, we can actually use this. This is the best form of coal, but this is used all the time when humans are using coal to boil water, make heat, things like that. I mean, a long time ago, it was just for transportation, right? We used it. Well, it was used for transportation as well, I should say. Things like the steam engines, right? They use coal. And then anthracite is this, so this is after